Right. Okay. So, sorry, we will be recording it, just to let you know that. And it's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Mina Samangooei from the School of Architecture at Brookes. Mina's a senior lecturer in the school and also a chartered architect, so a working professional as well in the field. She's the lead on sustainability integration in the undergraduate curriculum, so has really got a hands-on approach in terms of sustainability and how to embed it in the curriculum. And she will be looking at the use of SDGs as a framework for critical thinking in architecture students' design projects. So without further ado, Mina, would you like to continue?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Judy. Thank you, everyone, for having me here in an English-focused teaching, but I'd like to share what we're doing with architecture students. So it's really exciting to be here. So UK architects declared a climate and biodiversity in May 2019, probably 30 years too late, but better late than never. So we have to teach architecture students what this means and what we mean by sustainability. And so I use this framework, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to help architecture students understand what is meant by holistic sustainability. Traditionally, architecture sustainability is focused on energy consumption and perhaps on embodied carbon and natural materials, maybe a little bit about sustainable cities, health and well-being, and a little bit about sort of biodiversity. But there's so much more that we need to look at as architects. So that's what I hope to do and help architecture students understand. So just to give you a bit of background of what happens in architecture studio, students are given a site and develop a design brief from a client that they sort of make up. So in design studio, they're given a site and then they develop a brief. And so, for example, the site can be Iron Bridge in the UK, and the brief students develop could be to design a community centre procured by the local council. And so then they develop design solutions based on the brief that they've developed, including the types of spaces and facilities. So we call that the program for the building. So it needs this amount of toilets, it needs a hall, it needs a cafe, it needs a kitchen. So that would be the program of the building. And if it was a community centre, for example. Then they develop a portfolio. And so what we want to do as part of when they develop portfolios is to think about sustainability and holistic sustainability as part of their brief development. So developing sort of key design strategies, which is what they do anyway, but understanding how these design strategies that they come up with, for example, that community centre, how the design strategies for that community centre are addressing a different holistic sustainability goals. So this study that I looked at compared two approaches for trying to embed and integrate the UNSDGs. So there's the approach one, which is an integrated application. Students discuss which SDGs they are addressing in their design portfolio work with an aim to address all of them. So that's approach one, to ask them to sort of speak about the different SDGs throughout their design portfolios. And then approach two was a little bit more guided approach, where we gave them a sustainability matrix, which I'll show you later. And students state their key design strategies at the top of this matrix, and then they have the UN SDGs down the side, and they sort of make they tell us which UN goals each design strategy is addressing, and then they have to show that in their design portfolio. So show each of those dots within the matrix in the design portfolio. So this approach is a little bit more, they have to show us exactly how a strategy is meeting a goal. So they can't just make it up. And they have to show us where, so in a drawing or something. So it's a bit more analytical. So sustainability shown to students within a framework helps them to organize the complex information within a structure, because what's happened before in architecture and probably other disciplines is that the word sustainability is thrown around everywhere, but no one really understands what it is. That, you know, some people would see sustainability as energy efficiency, some people would see sustainability as the humanitarian issues with regards to equality. So everyone sort of came from a camp. But what this framework does is combine everyone's thinking and say, no, sustainability is about all of these things. You know, no longer need to argue. It's about all of these things. So architecture students are able to graduate with an understanding of holistic sustainability through a sustainability framework and show their future employers what they've learned in relation to how these global goals can be addressed through architecture, creating a clear message of what is meant by holistic sustainability. So the two teaching approaches were designed to encourage students to show which areas of sustainability they're addressing in their design portfolio work and how they are addressing them through design strategies, with an aim to look at sustainability holistically during a design process. So looking at it holistically, having this part of the design process. This creates a condition for learning. So these two approaches of teaching sustainability creates a condition for learning where students are motivated to learn sustainability ideas due to the direct application to their design. So what they're doing in Design Studio. And Design Studio is the most important thing for architecture students. They hate all the other modules, and Design Studio is the holy grail for them. So anything that's integrated in Design Studio will really make them happy. So this approach is based on cognitivism, where learning is encouraged through critical analysis of the goals, and constructivism by applying the goals directly to their work and ideas. This form of active learning can encourage critical thinking. So this constructivist teaching, in order to introduce this task to students, they were firstly introduced to the concept of sustainability and various sustainability frameworks. Various sustainability frameworks were shown to them and recapped from year one, so that we showed them why we chose the UNSDGs as the framework. This constructivist teaching reminds students that various sustainability frameworks are used by architects and that key areas overlap. So, and then some have some gaps. So concluding that the SDGs are actually the most comprehensive sustainability frameworks that architects can use. This process is justifying the pedagogical intent to increase student understanding of the framework they're being asked to use, and thus encouraging cognitive constructivism. So then they can go away and think, really, is it the most holistic one? Or maybe there are different ones that I could find, or maybe ones that are more related to building. So it helps them sort of think a bit critically. So there's a unique sustainability framework that the University of Westminster School of Architecture created. So, you know, some schools of architecture might create their own sustainability framework that they ask their students to work with. But what we quickly see is that a lot of areas are missing. So where is zero hunger? You know, where do we look at food production? Where do we look at, which is important for architecture, believe it or not, where do we look at inequalities? You know, this is mainly focused on some of the SDGs, but not all of them. So it's not holistic sustainability, but the SDGs are. So we used a mixed method approach for analyzing these two approaches. So it was quantitative data analysis, where we looked at the sort of matrix feedback that students received, and the kind of marks that they got for the strand of sustainability for their portfolios. Quantitative analysis, and the qualitative analysis was looking at their portfolio pages and how they've interrogated and analyzed the areas of sustainability that they've looked at through the different approaches. So this is their feedback matrix that they get. We guessed this strand. So the sustainability integration task was marked using this strand. So this is an example of qualitative analysis for approach 1. So this is a student page, and then they sort of spoke about some different SDGs using this section, and mentioned that the bar restaurant contributes to zero hunger because of providing food. Okay, that's interesting. So light, airy environment contributes to health and well-being. The bookshop contributes to quality education, and so on. So what's limited here is that some strategies address more than one goal, highlighting the benefit of a matrix with codes for each design strategy and the goals they address, because some of these things can address more, they can work harder. And also this page, the student kind of just pasted ideas, which is good because they've shown that they've at least said which part of their design they think is addressing a goal. So it's sort of starting that analytical process potentially, but could be deeper in more depth. This is another example from approach 1 where we just asked them to sort of show sustainability goals throughout their portfolios. So student of architecture project page used the SDG logos, but it's not clear in what way the kit of parts addresses climate action. So they put up climate action here and says sketches showing how kit of parts could be integrated into design. But we don't really understand how this kit of parts is addressing that climate action goal. We can kind of understand what they mean by making it up in our own minds as the reviewer, but the student could have been a little bit more explicit, not write an essay, but I think another sentence would have helped so we could understand what they're thinking. So this is approach 2 where we asked them to create a matrix. And so there's a dot for each code. So for example, this student felt that the design strategy adaptability addresses no poverty by buildings being able to be adaptable rather than being demolished. So perhaps that's cheaper. So that's how it can address sort of financial issues. So the goal 5, gender equality. So he felt that adaptability addresses gender equality in some way. And then this student had an interactive PDF. So when we click on this dot, it takes us to the page where the student shows us where adaptability addresses inclusion through their design. So we can see they can't hide their thinking. They can't just put dots everywhere. They have to show us why they feel that design strategy is addressing gender inequality in their design, how they've done that. So then the same portfolio, so on the pages of this portfolio that has this sort of dotted matrix, the student sort of puts in brackets the matrix codes. So let's go back to this. So this is 3 to 13. So it's strategy Q, and let's look at number 3. Strategy Q, passive solar design, and then this one 3, which is good health and well-being. And so the student felt that by designing with passive solar design, which means designing with like how the sun moves and sun warming spaces in the winter and the sun being shaded in the summer. So passive solar design, this student felt addresses a healthy interior environment, so good health and well-being. So then we can look at this and see what they've written, showing that there are good light levels, which contributes to a healthy internal environment. And then they put in brackets, and these are sort of lux levels on the architecture, on their design. So we can see directly how the student is thinking about sustainability holistically. And then this is another example of the matrix where the student has in the pages on the page where the matrix is, because one wasn't an interactive PDF, maybe the student felt it's easier. It says my internet's unstable. I'm nearly done. I think I'm going over time. So this was good, but we can't really see what's happening. So I think it's nicer if we, and then I guess that we can then directly go to the page if we want to see more. And the quantitative analysis showed that with approach 2, the matrix approach, that a higher percentage of students received good compared to the earlier approach. So maybe that shows that they're understanding sustainability a bit more with the approach 2 task. And so in conclusion, approach 2 is a step in the right direction with regards to demonstrating direct application of holistic sustainability linked with design ideas. And the task of applying SDGs to design portfolios can give students enthusiasm and a challenge to think about sustainability holistically, as well as in contrast, make some students feel the task is potentially too complex. But I think the idea of sustainability is complex, and the framework just gives them at least a framework to work in and work with these complexities. So yeah, overall it was really successful, and we're developing approach 2 every year. So this year we've asked them to show the codes have actually dots, so A1 like in the dots, so that we can sort of directly link it back to sort of where they've mentioned it in brackets on different pages, because it helps to see the codes visually. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mina. That was so interesting to hear the approaches, and actually that the providing a framework gave an analysis tool for the students. I was just wondering if anybody had any questions or any comments they'd like to make.
Yes, I have a question.
Great, go on.
Thank you. It's really fascinating, and I love the matrix idea. I think that's just brilliant. So can you tell me what software did the students use to use that? I think you might have mentioned it, but I didn't catch it. And also, how applicable do you think that is in other subject areas? I have very few architecture students, but I have a lot of students in business, for example. Do you think that same idea is adaptable or usable actually in other EAP subject-specific areas?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So the first question, the software they used was InDesign or Google Slides. A lot of students use Google Slides. The interactive PDF was made in a software called Adobe InDesign. And it's sort of quite used by graphic designers to sort of lay out pages for books and things. But Google Slides is also quite good and similar to InDesign. I think in terms of teaching business students, if you ask them, I don't know what type of projects they get, but so for example, if they were asked to develop a business plan, having a sustainability framework within that and the key strategies in the business plan, and then the goals, the different SDGs that the strategies address. I mean, definitely, because it helps them think holistically about how that business is going to tackle the issues of sustainability, and they can be creative.
Great, thanks. Mina, I just wondered, this is a sort of just a general question, but do they actually work on their design studio projects? Do they work in groups or individually?
They have group work in some of the design studios. The initial explorations like site analysis and some initial projects are group work, and then but their actual portfolios are always individual, unless it's an exceptional case. So for example, actually with my design portfolio in 2008, I paired up with another student, which is really, really rare. And so we submitted a combined project. But that's because when we did initial group work, it was an archway in London. And we sort of had this idea of a museum, like a hidden museum of archway. And so the tutors really felt that we need to continue that idea into our sort of main design. So they kept us together, and then we submitted the same portfolio. Great. Work, but it doesn't usually happen. That's very rare. You have to have an individual portfolio as an architect for when you go into practice.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Martha, have you got anything else to add? We've got a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about how you sort of balanced sustainability into your formative feedback, because presumably where you were asking them to bring out more of the goals, like how you did that. Or
it's really tricky because the module outcomes, the learning outcomes, is sort of what's in the marking matrix down the side, and sustainability is one of the key module outcome. Well, I can't remember if that's the word, but the module criteria that's really hard to change, basically that thing. So we try to change it within the written things in the matrix to make it more specific, and then it's sort of within environment, structure and construction, because it's a technology module. So we try to mention bits of the SDGs within those that are related to environment, structure and construction. But it is really tricky, and ideally they would be directly marked for within the matrix, how they address no poverty, how they address zero hunger, you know. But I guess this sort of also leaves it a little bit more open, because some projects might be more towards hunger than others, and it really depends on the site and the brief. Michael, did you have your hand up? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, thanks very much, Mina. That was really interesting. I just wondered whether you made a distinction between designing new builds and redesigning or retrofitting existing builds, or was there a difference as well in how much students applied the SDGs?
I didn't notice. There were some refurbishment projects in the design studios. So with the refurbishment ones, we quite tried to sort of make sure they still try to use natural insulations, for example, because with retrofit spaces tight and things like that, they tend to go for the thinner synthetic insulations, and which is obviously detrimental to life on land and life below water in its manufacturing. So we try to encourage them to have like a key design strategy for natural insulations. But yeah, they sort of have different types of projects, that each project, that's what's so lovely about this design strategy approach. Each project and each brief and each site is different and has different challenges, and the client wants different things, and probably the same for business plans when developing a new business. So every time the strategies will be different, and you can be creative. So sustainability used to have the reputation in architecture that it makes buildings ugly. That, oh, I don't want an eco building, they just look so ugly. But it doesn't need to be that way. The design strategies, if we can use this matrix to link the design strategies, which are directly linked with an architect's concept, so their main vision for the building, the strategies are directly linked with the concept. And if those strategies are addressing sustainability goals, then it's a win-win. You're getting your beautiful conceptual vision through your design strategies, and you're also hitting sustainability targets.
Oh, that sounds a brilliant combination. Does anybody have perhaps a good note to end for the lunch break? Does anybody else have any more questions? Well, I'd just like to really thank Mina. That was such an interesting talk. And another question?
No, it was an applause.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not very good with these emoji things, am I? Useless, in fact. I think it's time for lunch. Thank you so much, Mina. I think what's so great is that, you know, your passions come through, but also I felt I could start to use it in sort of other areas.
That's great.
As well,
Yeah.
You know, in business and whatever your subject is. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Martha. And it's lunchtime now, so the keynote for this afternoon starts at 1:10 or 13:10. It's in the main room, Strand 2, and then we will be continuing after that in Strand 3 with a couple of really interesting presentations. So have a good lunch and see you at the keynote. Afternoon keynote. Okay.
See you in an hour. Thank you, Mina.
Very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Mina. Bye. Are you okay, Mina?